business you need to get into is,
I'll go ahead and call this regularly scheduled meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call.
Commissioner Cruchat,
Here.
Commissioner Walker,
Here.
Vice Chair Dixon,
Here.
Chair Pahana,
Here.
all present.
Thank you. Announcements. These proceedings may be viewed on demand on the City of 29 Palms website at www.29palms.org. You may also live stream this meeting by going onto the city website and clicking on the meeting's agenda link. Public comments. This is a time for the public to address the Planning Commission on issues within the jurisdiction of the Commission that are not on this agenda. All comments are to be directed to the chair of the commission and shall not consist of any personal attacks. Members of the public are expected to maintain a professional and courteous decorum during their comments. There is a time limitation of 3 minutes, and if you haven't already done so, please fill out the name and address slips and hand them to the Planning Commission secretary. The Planning Commission is prohibited by the Brown Act state law from taking action or discussing at length items not included on this printed agenda. Public comments on specific agenda items will be deferred until consideration of the item of the agenda. Do we have anybody who'd like to speak from the public? We do not. Moving forward. Commission comments and reports of meetings attended. Mr. Dixon.
I have not attended any meetings.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cruchat?
I did attend the monthly Board of Directors meeting for the Historical Society, and I would like to add that on the 11th of March, we're going to have a remembrance for Greg Mendoza at Founders Hall. So that's a Saturday, and it'll be from 2 to 4 p.m. There'll be refreshments. This is, with his wishes, he asked for a gathering of friends, so it's just going to be a meeting of everybody. Remembrances, tell stories about Greg, and just kind of fondly remember he was a good man and a great contributor to the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Mr. Walker.
I went to day 2 of the strategic planning meeting with the city council. That was enjoyable. I actually learned quite a bit about some future city stuff, so it was a good meeting.
Thank you. I have not attended any any meetings outside of Planning Commission, and I did want to make a comment that I'm excited that we're meeting regularly to go over all of our fun stuff on this agenda. Moving on to our consent calendar for the approval of the Planning Commission meeting minutes on January 17th. Everybody have a chance to read them? Looking for a motion?
I make a motion we approve minutes as read.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Cruchat,
Aye.
Commissioner Walker,
Aye.
Vice Chair Dixon,
Aye.
Chair Pahana,
Aye.
approved.
Thank you. Items removed from the consent calendar. We do not have any. We do not have any public hearings, so we'll just move right along to our discussions and potential action items. Turning it over to Keith Gardner.
Yeah, so this, what you see here is a resolution for this particular property. The city has long-term plans to do senior affordable housing in this particular area. There's a long history of the city trying to negotiate with. Hello? Sorry about that. It was down here, and, there's a long history of the city trying to negotiate to purchase this property, and for various reasons, it's coming down to an eminent domain situation. So the only role the Planning Commission has in this is to determine that the potential use, which is an affordable senior housing project, is consistent with the downtown, or consistent with general plan and zoning. And since this is in the downtown general, I believe, zone, it is consistent. That's what we recommend that you find on your resolution.
Thank you. Do you guys have any questions?
I do not.
I just couple of things when I was reading through this. Now, this project, because you mentioned it would be affordable housing, is this an addition to the affordable housing project we're looking to put next to?
Yes.
Okay. And then the other question I had is, I know that a portion of our Project Phoenix funds had to go to an affordable housing project. So are we combining the two and that's part of where the funds are going? Or is this one the one because it's in the Phoenix, Project Phoenix area? I don't know. Did I make that? I probably didn't make that clear. Okay. A portion of our funds from Project Phoenix had to go to affordable housing.
Right.
Was that directed towards the project that we're putting behind, or we're looking at behind City Hall with the 3-acre property, or is that gonna go into this property? And what do we?
I don't know if I have an answer to that particular question.
Okay. Well, are we looking at, what type of affordable housing project are we looking at for
It
this
would be a
area?
senior affordable housing project.
A senior affordable housing, so a multi-dwelling. We would
Right.
remove the two.
That's a long-term plan for
Okay.
those properties. So, and the properties to the north and to the south are already owned by the city.
Right, I understand. And those both have structures on them.
Mm-hmm.
And so those structures would be demolished and replaced.
Deconstructed?
Yeah, deconstructed, okay, that's all.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Motion?
Yeah, I make a motion that we approve resolution finding the city's proposed acquisition of the property designated as assessed parcel number 0617-113-02 for the affordable housing project is consistent with the general plan.
Thank you, Jim.
I second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote?
Commissioner Krushat,
Aye.
Commissioner Walker,
Aye.
Vice Chair Dixon,
Aye.
Chair Pahana,
Aye.
approved.
Thank you. Community Development Director updates.
Oh, that is next. Okay, so, next, I've written the staff report to the city council for next week for planning commission appointments. If the city council does do the appointments, then we'll do whoever it gets appointed will be here in 2 weeks. Okay?
Okay.
And, the next, I know we're doing another, study session here, but, just so everyone can do their homework, I believe everyone has a copy of the downtown specific plan, yes? Okay. What I'd like to bring forward for a study session next week is, allowable uses in the downtown specific plan, and what I'd like to do is do a little compare and contrast between what the allowable uses on the development code say versus what the specific plan says. And what we can do is if there's any discrepancies or changes in language, I'm not talking policy changes, I'm talking like cleanup stuff. For instance, if the development code says something is allowed in a commercial area and the specific plan is silent on it, I want to get that cleaned up. So that way it's consistent with.
Could just take precedence then?
Well, that's the question I'm gonna have a workshop on in 2 weeks. So that's where I'm headed. Okay, so that's your homework for 2 weeks.
Allowable uses. Thank you.
Allowable uses, development standards, yep. Okay. And then we're on to the study session, yes?
Yes, on to the, sorry, I was making a quick note. Development. All right, on to study session. We have our workshop on the downtown specific plan circular chapter.
Okay, so before I get too deep in the woods here, you may have noticed we've got some extra staff here tonight.
Yes.
And I wanted to bring the extra staff in here to answer any questions that may come up on a technical nature on the issues we'll be discussing. So we've got Richard Pedersen, who's our city engineer. We have Craig Stacy, who's our Public Works Director, and we've got Carrie Minitry, who's our Community Services Director. Okay, so we have extra resources for this particular workshop. So what I want to talk about tonight is the circulation chapter for the downtown specific plan. Again, this is mostly cleanup and also asking for direction. There's four different subjects here that would like to get the Planning Commission's feet on. One is the side street widths in the downtown. specific plan. Another one is a briefing on Highway 62 and how the downtown specific plan treats it, or what it shows for it. And same thing with Adobe Road and what the downtown specific plan says, and what and the steps we would need to do to bring that to fruition. And the non-vehicular circulation. In other words, bike trails, pedestrian pathways, etc. Going to want to get some plan commission direction. So, by the way, I have all of these documents ready and loaded on the computer, so we can bring up any page or any exhibit from the downtown specific plan, the general plan, the development code, and our GIS system if the subjects come up. So just very briefly, this is what the circulation plan map is for the city. I know it's a little hard to read. So if you were to zoom in to the downtown, this is the area in question here. So Highway 62 is shown as an arterial 104-foot right-of-way, and so is Adobe Road, and so is National Park. Gorgonio, El Paseo, and Split Rock are shown as collectors. Okay. So, and this is what it means. Arterial is 100-foot right-of-way, which means you've got 2 full lanes of traffic in each direction. You've got a turning lane or a radius in the middle, and basically parking on either side. And then you have 12 feet on each side for sidewalks, landscaping, utilities, that kind of thing. The collectors are 66 feet, which is, I believe, is a lane and a half of traffic. Is that right, Richard?
Well, the collector allows for, 3 lanes of traffic, so you have bigger trucks could pull out of the travel lanes and then turn left into the commercial type locations.
Right. And then local street, and I want to do a clarification here. If the general plan does not specifically identify a street, it defaults to the local street width. Okay? So if it's not explicit, it goes to 60 feet, which is a lane in each direction with parking on each side and a 12-foot for a sidewalk and all that other thing, and utilities and whatnot. If you have a local street that has some sort of commercial development on it, the general plan says thou shalt use the collector as opposed to the local street. So you have 6 extra feet. Okay, and this is right out of the circulation element of the general plan. Okay, so as far as side streets go, what we're finding out is that in order to get the full 66 feet, because remember now that all of this has been commercial or mixed use zoning, a lot of these streets are at, this is just a sample, are at 50 feet. So anybody who wanted to do, say, convert, for instance, an existing house into a barber shop, for instance, or a cafe, would have to dedicate, by the general plan, an extra 8 feet on their side. Okay? And the same thing with these intersections. These intersections here, again, these are just samples, but it's pretty typical. They're typically at 50 feet. There are a couple that are at 60, but they're all at 50 feet wide. So again, if anyone wanted to come in and develop along these lines, they would have, by the general plan, they would have to dedicate an extra right-of-way in order to accomplish that. Our struggle as staff is that it's not physically possible in a lot of these instances. Okay, they're just the buildings are built right up against the road in a lot of instances. So to try to widen these streets would mean tearing down things like the ground squirrel in order to accommodate it, and which is never going to happen. So we have a specific plan, which means we can write whatever standard we want, or whatever we feel is appropriate for every road standard, building height, all that kind of information. So I'm asking the commission as a part of a workshop to say, would you like to see, and we'll take these one issue at a time, would you like to see us come in with a clarification to the specific plan to modify these side road standards so that way we don't run into these issues? And if so, as an idea, what do we think is appropriate for this area? And we have, like I said, we've got our staff here to answer some of these technical questions.
Well, you said that and because I don't see them in here, you said that those side street with specifications were in the general plan, correct?
The side streets are not in the general plan. So what if there's not explicitly mentioned in the general plan,
Goes back to
it
the
defaults
collector.
to a local street.
Right.
With the asterisk that says if you're doing a commercial,
Then you
Collector.
upgrade to collector.
Which is on the general plan is, it designated some streets as collectors because those are actual neighborhood collectors that should collect a lot of traffic on them. But then it says also commercial.
Well, the thing I have is, we recently talked about this. We said that the specific plan didn't have a circulation plan.
Right.
But it does have a connectivity and mobility framework.
Mm-hmm.
And the specific plan, as I understand it, is to provide guidance.
Mm-hmm.
If we want to get specific, that's what we have a development code for, that's what we have the other codes for. Do we want to get real specific or do we just want to change the development code?
Well, and that's an open question. That's why
Okay.
we're here.
I mean, if
So-
you want to sit there and say now, in some, like, you're right, I don't want people having to tear up if we want to improve a side street, I don't want to make it so wide that it impinges on people's businesses.
Right.
That makes sense. So I guess my question is, what's the best way to approach that?
This is why we're having a workshop.
Okay, then
So it's my suggestion here, and since this is, I'd like to limit this just to the downtown specific plan because it's a easier bite of an apple
okay,
as opposed to the whole city, because we can rewrite the downtown specific plan to do whatever we feel is appropriate. If we're going to do a big general plan update, that's much larger of a process.
okay.
I mean, I think a general plan update in the not too distant future is probably coming, but for right now, this is more of an immediate need.
Okay, so if this was an issue, we wouldn't have to put, are you looking for another section on connectivity? Or would we go in, or excuse me, on the circulation plan, or would we just go into the connectivity and mobility framework and specify that?
We can handle it either way.
Because my personal is like anything that we can do and just do the modification within the existing specific plan.
That's what I'm looking
I'm
at.
all for,
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do.
rather than writing whole new sections or whole new, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
That would be my only comment then.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
right-
does this make sense to the commission to write specific, sections just for the downtown for this particular issue?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea. And then each one of those the least is 25 per, which
Yeah,
adds up to the
so-
50.
Yeah, the way it was originally laid out way back, this is probably even before the city incorporated, is, and we can go back to the recorded map, so it looks like most of these are 50 feet wide.
Except for there's only one that looks like 30 and 30.
Yeah, so you can see over time, you can see these little notches here
Yep.
and there.
Oh yeah, there's 30.
Over
there.
time, people have come in to develop, and the city or the county, whoever it was, required extra right away.
And we'd have no repercussions on people that followed that rule before now coming back at us for if we change it.
I don't think so.
Okay.
And what are the concerns? Like, obviously, you have reasons for the amount of space that you need. So if we're, I get it. It's if the space isn't there and you're running to the building, you're not going to have them chop half their building down. Like, how are we going to compromise on this? But, we're talking like possibly delivery trucks or deliveries, not a semi, but maybe it could be like bread truck, right? Like, so we have to be aware of those clearances for any type of business that would want to go there, right? As well.
Yeah, and yeah. So I don't want to speak for Richard, but
Well, if
I-
you were to start with a clean slate and design your city, and you knew what trucks did as far as impacting it, you'd probably want to lay out all your streets 66 feet right away with curb to curb 40 feet, which allows you to park on both sides of the street and travel 2 lanes.
microphone.
And travel without too much without too much interference. But this is not an ideal situation. We're trying to retrofit something that's existing. And so it's kind of a balance between, you want to plan for the future, you want to be able to accommodate, if you're going to change all this to commercial, and if you want to change it to commercial and you're anticipating a whole bunch of traffic and cars and trucks parking on the street and having cars not back up because they have to wait for a car. Sometimes when you park on a local street on both sides, your travel lanes that's left over isn't really comfortable to drive two trucks side by side. So again, it's all part of, it's just a bigger picture. I think 50 feet does allow to put a local street, which is 36 feet curb to curb, which is pretty wide local street. It's just that you have to make compromises and say, well, if you have a big event at the Phoenix Community Center and you've got parking on both sides of the street, you're going to have congestion for those few times a year that you're going to have that congestion. But do you design everything to meet that one event, or you just kind of put up with the congestion for a day?
Well, and I was going to say that there is a precedence now. Project Phoenix got narrower streets. The Oasis Car Wash was conditioned to do a less wide street, so
Right away.
less wide right away. So there's precedent.
Well, your points are valid, and I understand, and we've all been to the cities where we're just trying to get down the street, but there's a FedEx delivery truck right in the middle of our way, or, we've all had to experience that. So I think from us right now, you're asking, what do we prefer the limits to be, and do we want them specifically drawn out in the downtown or general,
Yeah, exactly. So is it the suggestion of the commission, the direction of the commission to come up with something more appropriate because this is going to have to come back through a public hearing anyway.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So is there concurrence for us to take a look at this and come back and rewrite this particular, or put in that particular standard for these side streets? Or do we think that the existing road standards are fine?
So I did notice that we had somebody in the public want to share, and these are just a typical workshop, right? So just in the spirit of keeping the flow of the meeting going, I don't mind, having you come up to the podium and sharing your comments and stuff, but we'll just try to keep them, short and,
Oh, that's our public works director.
Hi, Public Works Director.
So the issues on the side streets are very limited. The flow of traffic's fine, and the width of the roads. When we paved them, they were between 28 and 29 feet wide between curbs. So it's larger than a normal city street, normal residential street. And your deliveries and your trucks, like you're speaking to, they use the back of those businesses. So we don't see a lot of delivery trucks on these sections where Keith pointed out, right off the highway. Coming off the highway, it's still wider than most streets in town. So for congestion, like Richard said, I have not seen an issue with congestion on the coming off the highway portion. And the deliveries are usually done at the back of the businesses.
Okay, so now we just have to kind of see what we concur about.
Are we looking for more okay, getting back to the question of, we know that we have streets that are existing, and if we try to push and make it standardized across the board, you're going to impede into people's property, are you going to identify those side streets that we're going to sit there and say, hey, they're kind of like grandfathered in, that this is the width we're going to have, however, new construction that comes in, this is the requirement?
There's more than one way of doing this. One is we say anything with a commercial in the downtown. In other words, this purple and this dark red here.
Right.
We could say, all side streets in the specific plan are X. The new standard is X feet wide. You could do it that way. We could come up with a policy that says these are pre-existing streets and no further things are You know, as long as it meets the 50-foot or whatever the standard is, then no further action is required. We could come up with something hybrid in between those two, but I think some clarification in the downtown specific plan is really warranted. So that way we're not in the situation where, you know, sorry, KO storage, you got to go because we got to widen
No.
the street.
No, yeah.
It's just not going to happen. But and I'm of the philosophy that if the rules don't make sense in the real world, then the rules need to change to reflect reality.
So I think too, what I'm thinking is, or what I'm hearing you say is like for the purple and the red being a commercial area, if we keep those to a generic thing saying these purple and reds are exempt from extending the roads out. So that way, if we go back in and the city collects additional commercial property, now all of a sudden makes it into a red or a purple, then now we don't have to go back and change this later on as well.
Right,
So that's what I think we should do.
Yes. Yeah, I want to apply common sense.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I want to apply common sense, not, we know these streets existed before. Yes, any new construction in an area that we want to be more, or is this bringing us more in line with what, state law?
No, this is not a.
It's
No.
how our code's written
Otherwise,
as
if it
far
was
as,
state law,
It's
we'd
only
have-
our code.
Oh, okay.
yeah.
We'd have to make them wider.
So,
but we can't.
yeah, well, we can't, and I think
So we're
that
trying to
that's-
put an exemption in here to say that these now continue on with this exemption here instead of expanding later and tearing down the ground squirrel.
In fact, I have a question for the city engineer. Let me see, I should put this in. In fact, the side streets, we talked about sometime them getting them in congested. Have you thought about making them one way, like one street going south, one street coming up north, when the time they go through the rear and turn? Have you thought about that to try to ease up the future congestion that might occur when we have the events?
To answer that, okay, we have thought about one-way streets, and that's typically the last ditch effort you would go through in the event that you have congestion. And our public works director says we don't have a congestion problem, at least currently. So that, if it ain't broke, I wouldn't entertaining fixing it. But if that came down to, if all those purple areas became high generators of traffic, and it became a bustling downtown area with lots of traffic, then that would be an option, of course, that we would use. I've seen that happen in other downtown areas where the streets go to one way, but that's after there's no other options typically.
Because I know there's a bus terminal also proposed somewhere in the area as well.
Yeah, those are usually generated by traffic. It takes a lot of money to change those things, and so you wouldn't fix it. You wouldn't preempt those problems. You'd wait till those problems started to come before you take effort to do that.
What's the width of Split Rock there? I believe it's wider than
South is 66 and north is 80 feet, yeah. South of the highway, from what I understand.
Thanks, Richard, for answering those questions.
Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure to see you again.
And let me bring up Split Rock here. Between Split Rock. So it looks like it varies a little bit. So it starts at
30 and 30 at the highway, right?
Yeah.
it's 30 and 30
Yeah.
at the highway.
Yeah, and the circulation element calls for even wider than that.
But then it, narrows to 25, 25.
Yeah, and then,
By the residential areas, or those are all commercial property?
It's still commercial.
well, if we
Those are residential.
so it's,
Yeah.
it starts off commercial and then it goes to residential. So
Okay, so in the area, we're 30?
Right.
Essentially, okay. So does that give guidance for staff to feel comfortable writing the exemptions in areas that are purple and?
we'll come up.
Okay.
We'll work together.
'Cause- And I think if we kind of boiled it down to what the options are, we have currently where it says commercial, the general plan says, and there's two numbers. There's the width of the right of way, and then there's the width of the street. So the street fits within the right-of-way, and it's narrower always than the right-of-way. And the right-of-way counts, like Keith was saying, accommodates sidewalks and other stuff that you put in the parkway. The parkway is kind of what changes. But so I think the three options you have, or that we have today, number one is the commercial standard, which says along any commercial, no matter where it is. And that's, I think, what we want to kind of tailor make for this downtown area. And that's a 66-foot right-of-way with a 44-foot curb to curb. So 66, 44, that's a collector or commercial. The next two options, the street's the same width. It's curb to curb is 36 feet, and that's a local street. Curb to curb is 36, and it fits either in a 50-foot right-of-way or a 60-foot right-of-way. The difference is the parkway behind the curb. So if we look at the 50-footers, we can say, yeah, a 36-foot curb to curb can fit in there. We'll just have 7-foot parkway, which allows for a 6-foot sidewalk. And that leaves like a foot left to deal with the, the property. And so we could theoretically use a 36-foot curb to curb within a 50-foot right-of-way for the specific plan, and that would fit, and it would be exempt from the commercial 66 wider stuff. Because the local one that we show in our circulation element gives a 12-foot parkway. Still 36 curb to curb, but 12 foot on this side, 12 foot on that side. And you can put wider sidewalks. If you have commercial and you have a group of people walking down a sidewalk, it doesn't have to be a 6-foot sidewalk and half of the people are walking in the street. You could put a 10-foot sidewalk in. So again, it's all pedestrian and vehicular travel. And the more width you got, the more room you've got more opportunities to move a lot of people various ways. The narrower you go, it gets tighter. We get to be a cozy community.
I think what we'll do is once we get to the public hearing stage, we'll bring it up and we'll present a couple of these options and we'll see what the commission wants to move forward to the city council.
Okay,
Perfect. Thank you.
thank you.
Yeah, 'cause I don't want to design everything right now.
Right. I don't want to get
Yeah.
ahead of ourselves.
I don't want to get ahead of
Mhm.
ourselves.
Like we talked about.
But it's good information.
We
Yeah,
have our
he has-
guidance.
yeah, he has
We will
guidance.
come back. The next item, as far as circulation goes, these next two are really complicated, and whatever is decided upon here is going to take a lot more work than a simple cleanup. This is what the downtown specific plan says for Highway 62. This is a potential roundabout at Split Rock, with the idea here that the bus terminal will be coming down here and sometime in the near future, and then it would be a one lane of vehicular traffic going all the way to 62 and a little bit beyond, and with bike lanes and pedestrian pathways. And this is what the specific plan is showing. That's a 90-foot right-of-way, as opposed to the 104, I believe, that calls for in the general plan. So we're at a loss here. So we have 2 lanes, 1 lane of traffic in each direction, parking on each side, and bicycle pathways on each side, and then the varying widths of sidewalks and paseos on each side of 62. So I guess I'm asking for direction from the planning commission and to say, okay, is this something we should be pursuing at this time, or should we forward it on later, or should we delay the decision on implementing this until a later time? This will take a lot of coordination with Caltrans. And
I was just going to say, do you mean pursuing, meaning
working out with
launching this
Caltrans
to
and all that.
Caltrans? Okay.
So, and if we do pursue this, right now this is shown as a trek route in the general plan. So, there's 2 philosophies of streets, right? In your downtowns, either you get the streets wide to move a lot of traffic as efficiently and quickly as possible, or in your downtown to have them more pedestrian friendly and walkable and with purposefully slow streets. So, other item to think about here, if this is pursued at this time, and if this is implemented, we would need to find another truck route through town. Because I don't think that, I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't think trucks would, and the big vehicles would be able to traverse this in an efficient manner.
So when, right, so when we were
So-
doing this whole downtown specific plan and city council's aware of the roundabout and, you know, how to slow the traffic down and the ideas of capturing the people to slow them down and that it wasn't gonna be an issue for semis to get through there. And obviously Caltrans is gonna have, you know,
Final say.
final say, and also like, hey, what are you guys thinking or what are we doing, and having all this input from everybody. So what is the biggest concern about what has been decided so far? Like that we could help guide you. So is it a mismatch of like a code that we're trying to sink in, or is there a dislike
There
somewhere?
is a mismatch between what the general plan says and the downtown specific plan
Okay.
says.
But, I mean, the downtown specific plan, again, I get back to this. It's kind of like a plan. It's
Specific.
guidance. It doesn't have,
It's meant to implement the general plan.
yeah, but it doesn't have a time element to it.
There is,
I mean, if we grow to the point that we want to do this, if somebody wants, yes, we want to put the roundabout, and if we're talking about just getting the general plan in line with the downtown specific plan, is that what you're saying?
that's what I'm trying to get to.
So which one do we change?
So which one do we
Okay,
change?
so we need a truck route through, because we don't have an alternate truck route, but we're not gonna have an alternate truck route for a long time.
Mhm. There is a certain time frame in here, and let me see, and this, here being the downtown specific plan.
Usually they're done for like 5 to 10
And we're
years.
talking about the truck route from Lear to Indian to Amboy,
Yeah, but there's no connection back to 62.
Yeah,
and there needs to be one?
Well, if we're gonna eliminate the truck route as established in the general plan on 62 and Adobe, we
Oh,
need to connect
and
back down to.
the
62.
existing one that I just said isn't sufficient?
Well, it brings you up to Adobe in the north.
And that's all because of this possible roundabout, correct?
Not just because of that, because.
The narrowing.
Also, it narrows
Yeah.
down to one
Oh,
lane
that's right.
in each direction.
I do believe that we had discussed, yes, it's gonna be narrow, but it was discussed that it would be sufficient. That's why
Yeah, I
this whole
remember
thing got
Travis saying
printed.
that there would be no issues with this roundabout whatsoever, because that was my concern.
And
Yeah.
the curves will be low slope, the truck could still traverse it,
If,
and even a large load.
is that not the case?
Well, I've kind of grown up a little bit in the last couple of weeks. We're building the median project right now,
yeah.
and you've seen it back up, and I
Yes.
apologize for that. It should finish up next week. We've already, but my point is, Caltrans has contacted us and said that the 18 feet wide lane, they have to have at least 22 feet for large, wide hulls. coming
Is
through
that to make that turn onto Encilia?
there. No, that's just to get past the median project.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So those barricades are pushed out to the point where it's down to one lane in each direction.
Mhm.
And those lanes that are down to one in each direction is not wide enough for a major wide load, which can be up to 22 feet wide.
Which is basically like the best thing that could have happened to us. Have an experiment like that to go, before we do this downtown, what are our alternatives, right?
Yeah, if you wanted to design a roundabout, you'd have to design it based on the worst-case scenario as far as width and traffic, and that would be a wide load going, and they can't turn very much, so
Yeah.
So you would probably get some comments from Caltrans if you
And-
were to implement a roundabout in a very confined area. I
Yeah,
mean, it'd have to
and-
be wide enough for a wide load.
And the catalyst of the roundabout is gonna be the bus terminal that should be coming in sometime soon.
So what are we doing with that extra that we need for what we're doing now, currently with that project in front of the staters, right? Because you said now
What was
there's
the like
coming
resolve
back.
of that?
Well, the resolve is to tear out those barricades. Those are temporary
Right.
barricades.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That's
they're
just
It'll go back
temporary
to,
anyway.
it'll come
Once-
back to
Yeah.
2 lanes in each direction.
Once construction's done, we'll be back to our habit.
Yeah.
Our normal, okay.
Normal, fine.
Yeah, I'm just letting you know that if we ever had a constricted highway, I know what that feels like, because I've been getting
Right,
pressure
yeah.
to move those barricades out of the way for a wide load that happened a couple weeks ago on a Saturday.
So then we're almost like, well, then where could you reroute that in the city?
Right,
Right.
yeah, and And we built 2 Mile Road a few years ago as a secondary emergency access out of the city. I was involved with that project. I don't know if you remember, but 2 Mile Road was a dirt road.
I do remember that. Some good memories there.
So, and I've been here since 1990, so I knew your dad. Is it your dad that was a council member?
Yes.
We should talk later. He was
Yeah.
he's one of the coolest guys that
Wow.
I met.
So-
Anyway,
So in the answer to your question, yes, there is a proposed timeline for this, which is in the future, but it's not as far in the future as one would think.
Right.
good point.
So if we wanted to pursue this or start initiating conversations with Caltrans, we'd have to start it here pretty soon, just knowing how Caltrans works.
Well, I think we should start looking at the worst case scenario, so that way when we go there, we can always bring it in versus trying to now expand out.
Yeah.
So the thing about, so we're looking at like, that is a primary truck route right now. And I understand that when we were talking about the roundabout, it was like for, regular traffic, that does have there is a
Right.
way it facilitates that type of traffic.
Right. Let me
And
see
the
if I
question
can
of
bring
trucks
up
did come up, and, yeah, I can't remember the,
And I also want to add
okay,
that
take the roundabout out. Okay, I'm good.
I also want to reemphasize another point that may not have been brought up in the past that's important is if we do something this drastic with the state route, Caltrans has been in the position of saying, you want to do this to your city
Then you
because you love
take
it,
care of it.
then you
You
take
take
it
care of it.
over, you take all the liability, you take all the responsibility. And I
We're
know
not
of
there
other
yet.
cities, and I've actually told them we do not want to do that.
So just for edification here, this is the truck routes from the general plan. This is what it's showing. So again, major, I believe these purple dots are the
Yeah, it's, yeah.
truck routes. Yeah. So from what this is saying, the trucks would either come up through Amboy and then back down over here, whatever that is.
Utah?
Bullion?
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So for the oversized loads and heavy loads,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of those roads aren't designed to carry that kind of weight.
Yeah.
Right, Richard?
And they're not even built. That one little S curve that you see, that doesn't exist today, from what I understand.
Off
You're
of
talking about over
Sunrise?
here?
That's a future
an
truck
easy.
route.
Yeah, it just goes straight to.
Yeah, 2 Mile. you
So
go-
it's again, this is a consistency in the document discussion, and where do we take this?
So we have here 104, but in specific it's 90.
90.
Oh,
90.
Well,
yeah.
Let me bring it up again. I believe it's 90 even.
What did we do? 14 feet. Oh, we created the
So-
patios, right?
The exhibit in the specific plan,
Mm-hmm.
which shows 12-foot travel lanes, it won't work because you have to have 22 feet for a large truck. So we have an exhibit in here that we cannot implement without creating a new truck route. We cannot implement this because the travel lanes aren't wide enough.
Which would cost more than eliminating this problem that we have now.
Well, yeah, if you have to create a whole new truck
Yeah.
route, yeah.
And they're, yeah.
Well, why is that median 13 feet? That's where the 13 feet went. And then 10 feet on the sides.
I'm looking for the truck route again. Oh, there it is. So, yeah, so this would, in theory, we would take Lear to
That's the Amboy Expressway.
Amboy Expressway.
Yeah.
Go straight 2 Mile.
Yeah, it's straight to
Yeah.
Mile. Or Indian all the way out, right?
You have to go 2 Mile to Utah.
And it's interesting because Utah Trail and State Route 62,
Wait a minute, that's not a real, that was,
Yeah,
a
that's what they
discussion.
just said.
Huh?
Yeah.
That's not built yet.
That's
yeah, I
what
know
they
it's not
said,
built,
yeah.
it's going
Mhm.
right through my house. I mean, you know, the thing about it is like, I remember bringing this, somebody had drawn that, and I don't think it was a serious route when you look at where
It's
it has
like a
to go
belt
through
route.
near Encilia.
Anyway,
Because
th-
right
this-
now, it's like, okay, there's Encilia, so it's going behind the cemetery, and then right through rural living.
It goes right by Sugar Bowl.
Yeah.
It was proposed
Yeah. Yeah, again, yeah.
But they're mostly taking Lear, Indian, up Adobe, out Amboy.
Yeah.
No, it would be, Lear 2 Mile, Adobe to Amwood. Because you, 2 Mile would stay.
Oh, they don't go as far to Indian.
Adobe, because that's the truck routes to the base, take that to Amwood. And then they'd have to get back over the mountain to Amwood.
Yeah, that's Sunrise. Oh, man, yeah, that's, yeah.
And another thing to
That-
consider is that Utah Trail
that
and
is not a
State
good
Route,
area to put it.
Mm-hmm.
the traffic signals were designed so that you could actually turn them
Pivot them.
away. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but those were specially made traffic signals to allow for large haul type equipment. So again, you have engineers that are engineers on this end of the spectrum, and then you have planners who have planners that are their best friends on the other end of the spectrum. So somewhere we have to like compromise and figure out what's the best for everybody.
No, that was never a realistic route.
Well, I can tell you from my experience, the people I have spoken to would be happy if the roundabout went away. And I mean, I've spent hours arguing in this roundabout specifically, just like hours.
Me
And
too.
so they would be happy if we said, never mind.
So as far as guidance, you need us to help you with getting back to the 104?
Well, it's a consistency thing, right? So,
Getting the
meaning.
downtown specific plan consistent with the
with the
general plan. Yeah.
But I do think we need to come up with a way to kind of slow traffic down through that downtown specific
Sure.
central area to
Make it more pedestrian
make
friendly
more
and.
pedestrian friendly and highlight all the things we have going on down there. 'Cause
Oh,
if you're
absolutely.
driving by 50 miles an hour, you can't read any of the signs anyway because they're tiny. So
Right.
But that
So
means-
like I said, if you want, a typical downtown is very narrow streets that purposefully slow down the traffic.
But an alternate truck route would have to be,
Would have to be
has to be
identified.
considered in the future. Yeah. And, you know, a guy who's, I don't know, yeah. Huh? Well,
So
actually,
we
it'd
need
make more
to-
sense to take Amboy all the way out to Lear.
So are we trying to find an alternate truck route to maintain what's in the
You don't have to
drawing?
do that-
Or
You don't have to do that right now.
like, are we talking about?
Well, and.
Or
I
is
think
that just like we're just saying that and then we're
Well,
moving
it would
forward?
be direction to us to say, yes, we like to have the smaller streets, but in order to do that, please, staff, find a way to handle the truck traffic and the truck routes.
I would say, I believe that the image we cannot enforce should be redone in our book.
Okay?
So how to address the concerns that we had a preemptive ability to overcome and learn from that, we should probably apply that too.
Okay. So, okay. So what I'm hearing is the planning commission likes the idea of a narrower streets for the downtown feel, but we need to find some other way of doing that.
Accessibility.
And that's also, we need to start working with Caltrans as well, to implement that.
Well, I'd like us to be confident in what we're bringing to Caltrans, so it's like this very like, hey, you well thought out, let's move forward, versus, well, did you consider
This
this?
is
We
an
shouldn't have them
idea.
be telling us, like, let's reconsider that, like, let's bring them a good plan that they're like, can't wait to work on that for you.
Yeah, it's as opposed to just another
Correct.
idea, concept.
Yeah, we don't have time for meetings like that. We're gonna wanna bring something well written to the table so they can be like, thank you, 29 Palms, let's get that scheduled next May,
And-
right?
Okay.
Fair enough.
And then I want to, this is just a study session.
It's
And
just
then
a study session.
this all eventually will be open to public comment.
Yes,
So, okay, do we take public comment at this time?
you can.
We can, yeah.
Okay.
It's a public workshop, so.
Yeah. Did you have something to say on this particular roundabout?
No, in fact, about housing. In fact, I also don't like the roundabout like the
Yeah.
planning commissioner said, because I use a lot of roundabout in this thing, Africa, and when the time I go to
Other
UK,
places, yeah.
it's a hazard, especially if people that not used to a roundabout as to whose turn it is,
Yeah.
and you can have some fatal accidents.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Vino.
But
Okay.
I want to comment on something else. If I actually missed the first 3 minutes, I didn't realize that the planning commission comment section is in the beginning of the meetings.
Oh, yeah,
I thought
sorry,
it's towards
yeah.
the ends, but if you can go ahead and accommodate me at the end, it'll be fine.
Okay, sure. Okay.
Okay, so I think we've got some direction here, and I think what we need to do then is come back with, study it, bring it back to the commission as a more solid plan, then take it back to the council.
Yeah, I think it was a good discussion. It was good ideas, like to kind of see where we're all like leaning and yeah. But then you got some work to do. Yeah.
This is why we're having a discussion.
Yeah.
I don't work at Hogwarts and I don't have a magic wand.
I wish, man, because it was just, it's interesting when you think like you're making this progress and then find out like, oh, it didn't work out. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Okay, so very similar situation, but I think easier to deal with is Adobe. There's a similar concept on Adobe to narrow that down to one lane in each direction, with 5 lanes, et cetera. The less of a complication here is that we don't have to do calculations. This is all us.
This is all Mr. Public Works.
Mr. Public Works, Mr. Engineer, and Ms. Community Services.
Yes.
Okay. Again, this is a unique standard. This is not your general.
Right.
Unique standard. So we're looking again at 1 lane in each direction, north and south, a fairly wide median, and some varying widths of paseos and walkways on either side, and a parking lane and a bike lane also on either side. So it's similar discussion. Should we begin to study this now? Again, a couple of the same issues, in the sense that this is also designated as a track route right now.
Yeah, I think with having the 62 configuration, if you could solve that, then maybe you can be more creative in Adobe and make that more of what we can't get on the 62. You can bring that to Adobe.
Okay. Yeah, we've got a lot more, since this is purely a city street.
Right.
We
Right.
have a lot more flexibility in what.
Yeah, you can ride your bike up and down Adobe versus worrying about if the 18-wheeler's behind you in the 62. Like, ideally, you're going to slow them down, but at least maybe you'll have more of those freedoms of creating what you can't get at 62. Just saying. What do you guys think?
And again, this is just in the downtown area. This is not all the way up to the basement.
This goes to, past, because downtown includes Civic Center. So I think it goes right to the
It just passed the
Civic
Civic Center.
Center, yeah.
Let me bring up the land use plan.
I think it goes to the county building, right? Yeah.
So, yeah, there's Civic Center, and then it goes just to the north of it. Let me see if I can bring up the land use plan.
So what are, do you have concerns
It's
that maybe we,
It's the same concerns as.
okay,
Except that you don't have to go to county. So
okay.
if it's the desire and the direction to start implementing this, then we need to study this in more detail for engineering concerns and public works concerns and
Yeah,
all of that.
and do you want me to save my concerns till another day?
No. No.
We have you here today, so.
So when you're 100 years old like I am, you get to see a lot of things. And one of the things that recently happened in the city of Paradise, this type of, it's a great concept, and I think it has its applications and in many places. What happened in Paradise, I don't know if you remember what happened in Paradise, but they had a 4-lane road going into their city, and their city was kind of up in the mountains. And they implemented this plan, and they said, let's just make it a 2-lane road, and let's get rid of this 4-lane road. And then they had a big fire,
Oh,
and then they had a lot of congestion. Nobody could get out of Paradise, and I think several hundred people died in a fire. So Caltrans, recently adopted a law. It's one of these things I pay attention to on occasion, that you're supposed to have an evacuation plan for your city before you do anything like that anymore. So it was a great idea. It looked nice. It made the place look pretty and beautiful. But in the case of an emergency, they couldn't get those people out of the city fast enough. And now that's a situation, they probably lived at the end of a cul-de-sac, and there's probably only one road in, one road out. And we have other opportunities. But that's some of the things that we should look at, is make sure that your evacuation plan has been solidified. And you may want to have a couple of streets in your city that remains 4-lane arterials before you make them 1-lane arterials, for just that one reason. If you have to evacuate for some crazy reason, you can do so safely.
That's a very good point. So when you what are you looking at when you see the evacuation plan that we have for our city versus what we're gonna try to look at again?
Right.
Yeah.
You know, same, again, similar situation on Adobe, but it's not quite as prevalent. If we narrow this down, then where the delivery truck's gonna go and that kind of thing. So, yeah, we'll have to study that as part of as further studies.
Yeah, I think I think you can get what you want with, I mean, not a whole lot of cars are parking on the side now. So you could maybe still keep a bike lane and some sidewalk and have 2 lanes and a nice median to guide your traffic. There's not, everyone's hauling around back and forth, so you can kind of direct it a little more, but still addressing those evacuation concerns.
Perfect.
Okay.
The ongoing cost of the pocket parks and all that are lined up Adobe. I noticed you had a lot of that in there. And who's gonna use the parks? Are they really in a place where we do have a lot of foot traffic compared to, say, Project Phoenix with our plaza and everything we have with the Paseo set up for more that type of foot traffic? And like you said, you can add bike lanes and enhance the sidewalks. I think that'd be good. And then medians similar to what we did on the highway. One that still directs traffic, but the vegetation and the danger of maintenance.
So you and I think a lot alike, because I would always be the one that's like, who's gonna maintain that, and who's gonna trim the trees, and when's the trimming tree schedule, and when are you gonna do this, and who's gonna blow the sidewalk? And they're like, hey, that's not your job. Like, you don't, just does it fit within a development code? And so I had to be drawn back a lot, but my mind naturally goes to facilities management maintenance. And I'm like, hey, how are we gonna take care of all this?
And pay for it.
And pay for it, right? Taxpayer, right? Yeah, without raising everything up that we can't afford to live here.
It would look very nice.
Yes.
Communities that have the trees down the center median, it looks beautiful, but realistically, does it serve the purpose?
Of our community, yeah. Yeah, I agree.
And again, I think that this is part of the long-term vision for the downtown.
Yeah, like it wouldn't be like we just planted like 50 trees in this one area and we're like, good luck, I think it's like a progression, like,
Well, as the town
yeah.
grows and develops, I imagine that would be something that would be feasible for our community.
Yeah,
At this point, I agree with you with medians that would help, so people don't do what they do now, when they cut across.
right.
Go willy-nilly, but I've seen congestion downtown at certain times of day, especially getting down there towards McDonald's and those places where everybody's running there for lunch and everything. If you slow that down to 1 lane, you run into the same issue we had at State Road.
Yeah, that's a good point. Oh. So I think you have guidance on that. Moving on.
Okay. So, all right. So the last, so we talked about side streets, Adobe and 62. The last one I wanted to topic I want to bring up is Wayfinding is the trail system as shown in the downtown. This is why Carrie Minitry is here. She can speak to this more fluently than I can. But again, this is what the downtown plan has as far as the trail system goes. And I'm not going to go into these in a lot more detail because I think Carrie can speak to it in more detail. This is what the specific plan has, which is not quite matching what the downtown or what the general plan has. And we have a Parks and Recreation plan.
That's a trail guide, right? Or that we have?
Yeah, so I think, Carrie, I think this is correct, right?
Which map are you
This is
looking
the
at there?
Parks and Recreation master plan?
Yes, so the Parks and Recreation Master Plan has several maps in it that have a trail system for non-motorized, so multi-use trails. And what we want to do is we just want to make sure that what's in the Parks and Recreation Master Plan is consistent with everything that's going to be happening downtown. I took a few notes here. So there's multi-use trails for walking, hiking, and biking. The community, when we started putting this plan together, preferred off-street routes. they were most favored rather than on-street routes. So for instance, class 1, off-street trails, the circulation plan mentioned an additional 30 miles of on-street lanes, which would be class 2 and class 3 bikeways. So we just, like I said, Travis and I have been working through this a little bit. We just want to make sure that what's in the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. I'm sorry, Keith. I'm so sorry. We want to make sure that it's consistent. Everything flows so that we're not looking at the Parks and Recreation Master Plan and then the downtown circulation plan and nothing kind of meshes. So again, we're just wanting to make sure that
There's a consistency issue.
there's consistency there. Yeah, so we do want to have bike trails, safe routes to schools. We also want to have safe walkways for pedestrians downtown as well. So.
So are we forgetting something, or is something being left out in what we built? Or, because I do remember being very like in tune with, you know, the walkways being created. Is something being left out, or what? We're just,
I wouldn't.
It's a
or you're
consistent-
just saying like, please reference like this manual
Yes.
before
Yeah.
you agree to.
Yes,
Okay.
we want to
So-
make sure everything is consistent.
So the idea
Yes.
here is
The master plan of 2008 of the Parks and Rec,
Mm-hmm.
reference that when I'm about to make the big giant change or something over here.
well,
Or
and
does it seem
we
consistent with
want to
that?
make sure all of these plans are consistent with each other.
Right.
Okay,
Okay, because the last thing we want is someone referencing.
like publication over there, and then they're like,
Yes.
Well,
over
wait a second, what
here.
about
Well, this one
other-
says something different.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that's where we're headed. So,
perfect.
um,
I like it.
so
Yes, yes.
But consistency, and not like theirs shows me going down, you know, Choya and around over here versus like, oh, that one said go, right?
Yes.
You want it to be the same type of trail, the same type of path, or what do you call them, wayfinders?
Uh,
Like
Yeah.
that
well,
it's all consistent.
it's
Yes.
all the same.
Yes, okay,
So that way we don't have different plans saying different things.
Yeah.
correct, I agree.
Okay, so that's direction for us to make these modifications in the downtown? To be
If-
consistent with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
okay.
thank you.
Because what we did in 2008, we've thus enhanced
Mm-hmm.
since. So are we needing to update this one too?
It will need to be updated,
Okay.
yes, yes.
Because or else that, you know, we're going to be progressing, and then we're going to be like, hey, come on, 2008 booklet, you know, got to
Yeah,
get that one updated.
for sure.
Yeah, okay.
Just, it's a consistency thing.
So we'll do like addition, whatever, right? As we keep growing. Okay.
Yeah, and I'd like to, you know, as things progress, I want the downtown specific plan should have all the detailed information on this particular area, so.
And
Okay, so that's direction.
'Kay.
Excellent. Okay, so the last thing, I wanna get, do you have any way from, I don't think I do. This is something else that the downtown specific plan asked us, is requiring of us, okay? Is having some sort of wayfinding program. By wayfinding, I mean, it could be signage, it could be banners and all that kind of thing. So it's, there's some very generalized things in the specific plan. But I want to raise, again, this is a specific plan, so we can write whatever standards we want for particularly like signage. You can, there's some things in the development code that could be considered pretty restrictive, or might make sense in another area, for instance. You may want to have a bigger, allow businesses to have a bigger sign, for instance, or allow their sign to be painted on the building, for instance. And some other historic downtowns, you might see remnants of, you know, hay and seed on the side of a building or whatever, hardware store or something like that. So that is something we could revisit for the downtown if we
so the
wanted to.
downtown specific plan currently has the reference to the signage code, right? Is that why?
Right, so it defaults to this, for the most part.
Because it's not detailed specific to this downtown area, which we could modify. It just says, hey, here's 29 Palms development code on signs. Please go see
Yeah,
that.
but we've gone through the development code, like, on signage
I understand that. So,
Yeah.
but what I'm saying
So I
is we
don't
have
know,
a downtown.
does the specificity
which
need to
means-
be in the development code and not in the downtown specific plan? The downtown specific plan has the planning director's at the planning director's sole discretion, certain exceptions to these guidelines may be allowed on a case-by-case basis.
Which makes me
Gives you a
incredib-
lot of power.
It
Yeah.
makes me incredibly uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because you're
Is that-
looking for the guidance to be there.
Consistency is
Okay.
key here,
Yeah.
and consistent direction and I think we're all familiar with this monument sign that is problematic for a variety of reasons. Way too small, way too many words, especially if you're zipping by at 40 miles an hour, you just can't see it.
Ooh, you're speeding. It's 35 through there.
I don't know, whatever the speed is.
So you want a really big sign?
Well,
I mean, by whose call is that an inappropriate sign?
I'm
He's playing devil's advocate-ish, right?
Yeah, I know.
Oh, okay.
You can't see that as you drive by.
Well,
It's not very legible at
That's-
that speed.
Even doing 35 miles an hour, you can't read a single word on that sign or know what those two picture signs are representing.
right. So and this is also we're also hearing
Was
from the
that the
National
goal?
Park Service that they
Yeah.
would like to have better signage.
of that
Okay.
sign, to read that in, or was that for the walking traffic?
Well, just period, right? It's like, how are we announcing ourselves? How are we gathering the people
general,
to go
yeah.
there in general?
So, for instance, the National Park Service is now taking it upon themselves to put up little
Because
signs.
you'll see that arrow going, wait, I need to go that way. Right?
Yeah.
Oh.
So, I mean, this is just a very quick mock-up of what the sign could be. You know, this
Right.
is not the final design,
Of course.
but this is an idea that that could be brought in. We could also have some sort of banner program for the downtown.
I did hear the city council speak about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, again, these banners up close look nice and lovely, but where they're located along 62, they're really, and Adobe, they're a little hard to see at this scale. So, you know, we could have particular design guidelines or design requirements, sign requirements in the downtown that says if you're going to have a banner on 62 or Adobe, it has to be of a certain size, for instance. You know, and as a, you know, there's other banners in other downtowns. Just we picked out some at random here, but these
Yeah.
are all city facilities or government facilities of some kind. So, would the commission like to see a downtown specific signage program, or do you think the sign program for the city is sufficient?
Well, you brought up the example of the community center and national park sign. And it sounds like somebody said, okay, we've agreed to this sign, it meant all our things. Oh, gosh, it's not working the way we thought it would. Okay, but there's nothing stopping from somebody making a bigger sign with the existing
Because it says you can go,
regulations
yeah, I like that one. Go ahead and
you
put that
know.
one up.
Well, and that's
That's,
true
yeah.
too. You know, so
I mean,
If you go to slide
If-
10, you
yeah.
have consistent signage that we've been using and I think is pleasant, but I don't, so you want us to help, like, or you want guidance to go back and write a different,
well, that's yeah. 'Cause
Okay.
yeah, exactly. So
do
would
you
the
want
commission-
examples? Like, okay, this is the type of sign, this is the sign. Are we going to have ratios of, you know, this is the sign you need if you want to be able to see it from 30 feet away?
are these signs not visible? Or the color scheme wise, or
Well, I mean, that's just it's an idea. So
they're like Purple Mountain Majesty, they're beautiful.
they some of them do turn pink.
Yeah,
They do
Well,
turn pink.
that's maintenance, right?
Mind if I comment on what Mr. Jim just said? In fact, Jim said that Keith is the power at his sole discretion. I am not in favor of that, because if Keith doesn't like me.
I'm not saying it,
No,
No, Vino, I
sorry, in
understand,
fact, I
I
mean,
understand what
what
you're
you
saying,
quoted.
and that's why.
Sorry, I mean, basically, if Keith doesn't like me,
Or the sign.
he
that-
might never approve my sign.
Right.
And I
That's
don't know
very
if you all
much to
know,
Keith's
a couple
point.
of weeks ago, I walked into City Hall and asked a city staff, do you treat everybody like this? And he goes, if you go down that road, it'll get harder. I asked him, is this a threat? He said, I told you if you go down that road, it'll get even harder. So it's better we have policies in place rather than leaving it to the sole discretion of staff. So a person like me coming up, I can look at it and say, this is what the code is saying. If I'm not within the code, it's okay. So maybe we need to amend what is written
Well,
in
I
the
don't,
code book.
I don't think the
Oh.
purpose of that statement was,
Thanks.
because I think they wanted enough, I would think they wanted to provide enough versatility so that somebody could, without having something so specific and so driven on what the signage could or could not be. And I know it's kind of hard to sit there and say, and right, if you had a planning director that was very vindictive, he could
Right.
do things like that.
Yeah.
And that's,
But
to Keith's point, he wants a little bit of a guideline so he's not having to be accused maybe of those kind of calls, right? You just want to be like, hey, it was within this and it was within this, but still having that versatility of, can it be hay and seed on the side of the building? Can it be this without it being what our monument sign is right out front, right?
yeah, but yes, we do want a balance, but I want a balance between common sense. I don't want it so directive that, it's like, well, this sign really doesn't, it's a little different because it doesn't meet exactly, but it does meet the purpose of what we want the sign to do.
And understood.
Yeah,
And I
that's,
think-
it's actually kind of tough. That's tough because what you're trying to go for downtown and meet and fit this and draw the eye of, and then stay within our standard development code of, whatever the code number is and this signage, and it can only be this big with this light wattage and this, right? So, yeah.
Well, I think too, everyone's gonna start saying, well, I want a 30-foot by 10-foot sign, and then it's gonna block someone else's view, and they're gonna do one bigger and so forth, and then it's just gonna get out of hand.
Well, that's where common sense comes in.
Well, I know, but people don't,
But
not
common
all
sense,
people have
yeah.
common sense.
We can't do that.
Yeah.
Well, and, okay, so,
That's,
I still
yeah.
want the community planning director to have a little bit of.
yeah, I think there's always an interpretation
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
But I think if something, for instance, there could be a provision that says if you want to do an advertisement, paint an advertisement on the side of your building, for instance, maybe that's of a sufficient size or attention-grabbing thing that we take it to the planning commission, for instance, as opposed to just having the planning director having its sole discretion. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's what the commission's for,
Yeah.
to rule in those tough situations. That's what a planning commission should do, is
Yeah.
as a committee, to look at that.
Yeah, because anyone's signage that they're gonna have is wanting to be as visible as possible. That's what gets them that money.
Yeah.
So I think that we do need to set standards instead of just saying, yeah, we'll play it by ear, and you can have this big one, and then it keeps going out.
Well, we review signage. We approve, the one on Sullivan for the church. Like, they come across our path. So is that what we would like to give guidance to the
Well,
staff
and
for
it's-
them
it-
to
but
implement for us for downtown?
My particular focus was trying to get the public signage, not necessarily the private signs, but it's part of the same sort of ideal.
It could, yeah. it
Well, I mean,
could.
I think 5, like, if we look at number 5 again, I mean, where's there an issue? We're, one, gonna narrow down those roads as is, which should hopefully slow down traffic. So now all of a sudden we got these bigger signs, we saw in traffic, now it's gonna be, I think, kinda terrible in my mind, versus staying with what we originally had. Then when we look at number 6, I don't like that at all. So I don't think we should have people just throwing out regular signs on the
Oh,
side
like
of the road.
sandwich
I think
signs?
that's terrible.
I don't disagree, but we do have a standard, and we have a standard in the specific plan, and we have a regulation of the downtown plan. And the fact that the one sign design was poor was not because of anything in the specific and development plan.
But
It was because somebody chose a poor sign,
I agree,
but if-
but our remedy shouldn't be to put another sign out and by the road.
I agree. It means take down that sign, put up another sign at the expense that
Yeah.
fits the bill,
But if the
because you made a
overall-
mistake.
Yeah.
If the overall sign ordinance is narrow for all of 29 Palms, but downtown we want to draw the eye to people, maybe we could make it so there is a specific 29 downtown specific sign ordinance that is a little more lenient. You can't have a 20 by 20 sign outside of your house advertising your home business where you make trinkets.
So in our current plan, this is very detailed of what you could or could not do. So
Well, that's for private signage. That's not for public signage.
this is commercial private signage
So,
and private signage.
yeah,
So
so.
it
there-
does
there's-
have, like, if your max size is of one per building frontage of 60 square foot, your bottom minimum could be 8 foot by 14
Right.
foot. So
And there's the public signage is more of my concern than the private stuff.
which is
But still.
the way we're going with the way that our street signs look and the way that our wayfinders are.
Street sign, the potential banners and things like that.
Yeah, but if you look at this picture here, and this is an older picture, but if you start looking at those big old signs towering up, then you're gonna have people start throwing those up there, and it's gonna take away from the ambience of
Of a
our
downtown.
community or downtown.
I think it's a bank, yeah. When it was at Chavez
That was
was
in
a
the,
bank.
that was in the 70s, evidently.
That's
the old Security Pacific Bank.
Mhm.
now at Chavez.
Yeah.
Well, I know, but
Mhm.
still, if we
so-
allow it to look like that,
Okay, what are you looking for? If we take the sentence, at the planning director's sole discretion and say, planning commission? No, I mean.
Well, if it's planning commission, then you get public hearings.
Right in front of me that covers signage,
Mhm.
so I can do a cross comparison, but I know that goes into more detail than the specific plan.
and then don't they have to come to us anyways for approval of that?
For certain signs. So,
So let's just make it that they come for approval
yeah,
for
and,
that.
and we, and again, this is direction to come to us to make recommendations
Yeah,
back to you.
so it's just
for the
not
code.
to the sole,
Is it broken?
Is the current sign program broken?
apparently it is if they're
Mhm.
saying that small one is too small now.
No, yeah, but that was a design choice on their part.
Well, I
It wasn't
agree.
It wasn't because.
Well, it's not the size of the
regulation was
sign.
for
It fit the
downtown
parameters.
It's always the size.
It fit the parameters of it. It's just like, whoa, why did we do better on by that sign? Is now the aftermath thought of that sign.
Yeah.
Not that it didn't meet any of this, or they illegally put this sign up that is not supposed to be there. It's there, it's just, do we like it, and if not, how do we make that more consistent downtown going forward to prevent or to enhance?
Well,
just
and-
putting a
and
standard, like-
I'm gonna come back to a potential banner program, for instance. Do we wanna have, certain areas having certain size of banners that would be for our public, the street lights and things like that. Which is not
Well,
very.
how does that hold up with our wins here?
Well, we currently have banners, so what are we doing with them now?
Yeah,
There's
but
no official banner program is the thing.
So you mean like we could sponsor like every high school kid who
what-
went
here's
to
what
the
I'm getting at.
military, you can put a banner.
Okay, so what you could say is that from here to here, I'm just making stuff up right now, from here to here, banner signs have to be a certain size in order to be visible, okay? If they're too small, they're not visible. If they're too big, then you're gonna have a wind shear problem.
and then who puts those up? Who's in charge of that?
Public Works.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was along the lines of what I was thinking, one of the many things I was thinking. And if there's smaller type of banners that might be appropriate somewhere else, we can take a look at.
And is there a
Okay.
limit to how many people could put up a certain amount of banners in a row for their company? Or is it like, if I have the money, I could put a banner on every one and take the monopoly of the street?
Right now, the banners are the national parks banners and banners that we put up to support our events and support the troops.
And these,
Okay.
yeah.
You couldn't put banners up.
And these run
Okay.
along
City
Adobe
Street.
and
But
62.
now we're saying we can, or that's a.
No,
possibility.
we're saying, hey, commissioners, what do we think? Do we want to put a regulation on this? What are we thinking? Should they be within this certain font size? Should they be this big of a size? What do you guys think? That's what's going on right now.
That's,
Anything that
should
goes
we
down
codify this is what I'm trying to get at, at least for the banners.
For the banners we've already have in place that haven't had a problem in the past.
Well,
Or do you mean to like expand it to allow
But-
somebody
but
to
that-
put a
that's a
banner
banner.
program?
Yeah,
That's
they
a
can-
sandwich sign. That's not a
that's a
banner.
center sign. These are banners.
These are
Right.
banners.
But
I mean, we're not gonna put, a commercial entity is not gonna put signs all the way up and down the street, we wouldn't allow that. Are you saying that we have to be that specific? It's like, okay, city, community signs, public signs that we put up, banners,
would
we
have to
put
be a
up along
certain
the street
size, yeah.
To publicize an event or do something.
Happy
they
4th
will
of
be
July,
like-
whatever.
Right, I mean, are we saying we don't have a standard for that banner?
Not the,
Do we have a ruling that sits there and says you know, like, I have a public street light out in front of my store, can I put a commercial banner on a public street light out in front of my store?
So far, that's not the case.
And I
We're
guess
not
the other
doing
thing too would be one of
I'm
those,
assuming no.
one of those restaurants, if they want to put a sandwich board out there, is there a rule or regulation says they can't or they can do that as well? Because then all of a sudden, we're gonna have a influx of all these sandwich boards littered down the street.
Yeah, there are regulations.
Yeah, there are
I don't have them
regulations.
memorized, but there are regulations for that, yes.
That's what I'm saying, I think we're saying a lot of things here, not reading them, because I don't have the development code signage in
Yeah.
front of me. So I don't know what more guidance, come back with a statement of, here's where I see, here's
Okay,
where I
I'll
see-
be more
here's
specific
where I
next time
see
around.
Inconsistencies between the development code and our downtown specific plan.
I'll come back with a little bit more specific, information in the next.
Sorry, I know that you're just trying to improve, so I do apologize if it feels like we're like, what are you, like attack or anything.
This is
Be-
why we're having
yeah.
a workshop.
And I feel like
And-
it's
and
very
we're going home.
productive. I
And-
do
and-
feel like it's good productive.
Sometimes it,
Yeah,
you know, and the last thing I want to do is, you know, have you guys trying to read my mind too.
okay,
Because.
that's fair.
You know.
Yeah.
What makes sense internally may not make sense to, you know, to the commission. And what we
Yeah.
want to do is make sure the commission is understanding what we're trying to come up with. Or
Makes
what our
sense.
ideas are.
Yeah. I think the
So,
banner,
fine.
this example is amazing. Like, that's a really good graphic and,
So Travis,
That's two, by the way.
it seems like you're trying to get out that you would like to enhance the size of the banner with the examples.
Well, it's, I guess what I'm trying to get to is this are the banner regulations and things like that, should those be in the downtown specific plan?
That was covered by the general,
Doesn't it just,
or development.
it doesn't reference the ordinance for signage at all?
I don't think the banners do.
No, I don't believe, because those are all, done internally with staff. That's not anything that's gonna run through by a private entity.
yeah, because it's the city doing it. It's not like McDonald's or somebody paid for something to be like, hey, breakfast is over here. I'm gonna put all these signs on Adobe. Yeah.
I've been here 21 years and we've been putting banners up and down since I got here. So I don't know how long before that they were implemented,
Yeah.
but I know they've been here 21 years at least.
Okay.
I
Yeah,
think
it
there's-
is,
Are they an issue?
it is not part of our development code. These banners that go on the light poles, it's not part of our development code.
You can't go to a page anymore.
No.
Then yes, we need to have something in this downtown specific plan that speaks to these in some sort of regulation.
To
Yeah.
regulate us,
Well,
of the
well,
city
to-
putting
to-
them
to
up?
regulate-
quite frankly, yes.
Not to regulate
Okay.
us, but to regulate us, but also to say, private business, you can't put a banner on a street light if you choose to put a ladder up there and hang it up there.
So I would ask two questions. Is there something wrong with the current situation? And there's something that we can do to enhance it? In this case, it looks like what's wrong is there are no regulations. Though it may not have been a problem, it might be a good idea to put it into effect.
Is it just a preference of when we as the city are putting our own stuff up, hey, can we make that font a little bigger? Like,
Yeah, right
I-
now, there's a lot
I
of
don't-
freedom.
But also, I think we're trying to get to the point to where whoever can't go and hang a banner off a street light, right?
But they're
Well, I don't
not.
think they can anyway.
But they're not, but what if they get the bright idea
Then
and
they have
want to
to,
do
then
that?
they have the, code enforcement and a fine.
But there's nothing saying they can't.
There's nothing, you can't put a sign on a public street.
You'd have to have a permit, and I don't know if it's a problem currently.
When we
No,
talk about
this is
banners,
why-
wouldn't that be the same as the street, or the sandwich signs?
Here's a couple of things that I think
Talking out of it.
that for downtown, that maybe we can write into the downtown plan to be a little bit more lenient on signs. One is, as an example, to put a procedure in there that says if you want to paint the side of your building and have an advertisement on it, that can go to the planning commission, for instance, as just as a discussion point. Okay, as of right now, there's no allowance for that at all. It's expressly prohibited in the development code. Secondly, having some form of I don't want to get into the content of the signs, but how big signs can be where I think is appropriate in a focus area like a downtown. That's what I'm trying to get to.
Okay. But have to define that in the specific plan.
So
I don't
there's
know.
language in the specific plan about, the maximum.
Private signage type and size
The-
allowed.
Oh, there's the private signs, but there's also the public signs.
Okay,
Okay, well, you're the city, I mean, we'd go to the community development director and tell him how big he wants it. I mean, okay, yeah, the public signs, I mean, so you're talking about dictating down, the city administration wants to do its signage.
There's
that what you're asking
there's
for?
park and rec
In the
plan.
development?
There's other things
If
that
you
we
wanna
govern
define in the
ourselves.
Development code, how the city administration wants to do their signs, I guess that, yeah, okay.
well, what were you gonna say, Diane?
Well, I was talking about private signs. There's language in the specific plan about the maximum size of a sign. But it does not, there's no way, it doesn't tell you how to calculate for each business. Like in the development code, you can have 1 square foot per 1 linear foot, I think, or 2 square
Right,
foot
of the
per linear
frontage.
foot of building.
Mhm.
So the specific plan says, these are your maximum sizes, but it does not give you the calculation. Do you get 1 square foot per 1 linear foot? Do you get 2? It doesn't give you that. There's also no reference to the development code in the sign section. There's no, it doesn't reference, those are 2 things that we have to fix.
We have some
Okay.
ambiguity we're
So
trying
you
to
want
fix.
Yes, yes.
Yes, we need to clear up the ambiguity.
Thank you.
Because as far as the public signs, there's regulation by Caltrans as far as the highway goes.
Okay.
We can only put certain size signs up.
And what about other signs? Because I see a lot of junk cars for sale, signs, Pottery House, I think, or now it's putting signs up on every corner, big old banners. So what are the regulations for that?
Well, those would be,
It's based on your, if it's a wall sign, and I don't have the code memorized.
It's like
So
2x4s
If
and
it's a wall sign, it's based on the linear frontage of your building, or the wall, linear length of your, building. If it's a monument sign, then it's based on the linear frontage of your property, and you're allowed so much per
Yeah.
square foot.
but what
per
happens if it's
linear
just on the
frontage.
side of the road?
Well, there are off-site signs for businesses that exist. They can have one off-site sign, it's 8 foot, and you can have 32 square feet of an
Okay.
off-site sign.
Yeah, I think we're talking about 2, because I've seen
Other
like,
signs, like the signs that you refer to, like the we buy vehicles or whatever,
yeah,
those are illegal and code enforcement's addressing those.
okay, because I saw a whole bunch of those plus some other ones from like the church signs and stuff like that.
like if you
on
had
Utah Trail and,
written owner's permission to put a sign in like one of the vacant corners, is that like regulated in the
You need
code?
yes,
Permit.
it is.
Okay.
You need a permit, you have to get their permission,
Right.
and then I said it's 8 feet high, and I think it's 32 square foot max.
Right,
But it
so,
has to be on a vacant lot.
So yeah, we'll come back and we'll propose some fixing to the ambiguities, and we'll come up with some other more solid things that we can implement.
did you get guidance on our wayfinding signs?
That's what
Okay,
yes.
just wanna make sure.
It's interesting. The wayfinding is quite the topic. Okay, so I think we've got some direction.
Okay, I do have, I'm gonna go ahead and do this for Vino for the, public hearing that he could have up to 3 minutes for his request to speak.
Thank you for allowing me that, Leslie. My name is Vino Nathraj. In fact, I'd like the planning commission to put something in front of the city council to go ahead and address our housing shortage. Housing is close and dear to my heart. I don't think anybody in this room, and that happens to include myself, has a problem with housing. And I meet a lot of people who live from paycheck to paycheck and work in the city. And I know we got 500 STRs, short-term rental, and I myself had a short-term rental in Joshua Tree. And basically, I was beta testing what the occupancy of my short-term rental was, only to find out it was running below 50%, and I pulled it out and I put it back into the housing market. We have 500 vacation home permits given. If they're running below 50% occupancy, it means that any given day, we have 250 homes that are sitting vacant that people cannot rent or cannot find housing. So I think we need to look at other cities that use a lotto system, try to reduce that, bring some of that vacation rental back into the rental pool, and even the housing that is there in the rental pool. A lot of people that work in this city, they work from paycheck to paycheck. Not only in our city, I think nationwide, there was a survey done, about 64% of the people live from paycheck to paycheck, and they can't afford housing. And our homeless population is happening to increase. In the last city council meeting that I happened to attend, I've talked to Keith. There's about 23 or 24 acres behind my existing hotels. I've counted up to 20 people sleeping in those bushes. So something needs to be addressed as to how we get more housing back into the rental pool. Thank you for allowing me this time, Leslie, that I missed in the beginning.
Of course,
Thanks.
yeah. Thank you, Vino. Did anybody else want to speak before I close it? Everybody okay? All right, closing. Okay, so with that being said, if we don't have anything else. All right, thank you for everything. And we'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting.